What would you do if, in one reckless, breathless moment, you crossed a line you could never uncross? A moment so raw, so electric, that it carved a permanent mark across the story of your life? I never believed I was the kind of woman capable of such betrayal. I was the good wife. Devoted. Predictable. The woman who made grocery lists in her head while folding laundry. Who never forgot a birthday, always had dinner ready by 6, and knew the exact shade of loneliness that came with a once-loving marriage that had quietly lost its fire. But then the storm came. That night, the sky split open without warning. Rain pounded the windows with a fury that felt personal, as if nature itself had grown impatient. Thunder rolled across the horizon in long, growling waves. The air turned heavy, so thick with tension, I could feel it pressing on my skin. I remember standing in the kitchen, drying a dish I had no intention of putting away, just listening to the storm's rhythm against the glass. The house was too quiet. David, my husband, was gone again. Another business trip. Another excuse. Another night, I would fall asleep alone in a bed that felt colder each time he left. But Eli was home. My stepson.
22.
Strong, assured, and already possessing the kind of silent confidence that older men faked with loud words. He had David's sharp jawline, but not his father's distant eyes.
No.
Eli's gaze lingered, always just a fraction too long. He looked at me sometimes like he saw something I hadn't shown in years. Something hungry. Something lonely. I told myself I was imagining it. I had to be. Then the lights went out. A blinding flash lit up the sky outside, followed by a bone-deep rumble that made the windows shiver. Darkness swallowed the house whole. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The TV blinked off. And in that instant, all I could hear was the storm and the sound of my own breath suddenly uneven.
Wow.
Eli's voice broke through the silence, a low murmur from the living room. I fumbled for my phone, the small flashlight slicing through the dark. My hands trembled more than I wanted to admit. "Power's out," I said, my voice too thin. "Yeah, no kidding." He was closer than I expected. I turned, and there he stood just a breath away. The light caught his face in sharp angles, illuminating the fullness of his lips, the dampness in his hair, the stretch of his t-shirt over a chest that looked freshly worked out. He must have just come from the gym. There was the faint scent of sweat and soap, clean, masculine, intoxicating in a way that unsettled me. I swallowed hard. "Did you check the breaker?" I asked, too quickly. "Storm must have knocked the whole block out," he replied, shrugging. His eyes dipped just for a heartbeat to the open V of my blouse. And in that instant, something shifted. Something silent, but undeniable. I felt it. I should have walked away. I should have laughed it off, gone upstairs, locked the door behind me, and buried myself under the covers until daylight came and this confusion passed. But I didn't. Instead, I turned toward the hallway. My foot caught on the edge of the throw rug, an old, stupid thing I'd been meaning to replace, and I stumbled. My ankle twisted, and I fell forward with a small cry.
Eli caught me.
His arms wrapped around my waist, firm and secure. But the fall had momentum. We tumbled backwards together onto the couch, me landing atop him, my knees on either side of his hips. And in that moment, everything changed. The air between us crackled. My heart pounded in my chest, matching the rhythm of the rain on the roof. His hands were still on my waist. His breath was warm on my face. And beneath me, I felt his body respond. So did mine. "God help me," I responded. My cheeks flamed. My stomach coiled tight. I inhaled sharply, ready to push away, to create space, to reclaim the line we had just obliterated. But he held me there.
Gently.
Firmly. And I didn't move. Neither did he.
A beat.
Then another. His hands slid upward, slow and deliberate, tracing the sides of my torso with a reverence that made me ache.
"Ellie," I whispered,
not knowing whether it was a warning or a plea. He exhaled, his breath ragged. His hips shifted beneath me, and there was no more pretending.
He wanted me.
And I wanted him too. I should have stopped it. I should have found strength in that moment, should have summoned every ounce of virtue I had left. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned in. And in the thick darkness of a powerless house, while the storm raged and the rain screamed against the windows, I let a single moment of weakness claim me. Our lips met, and with that kiss hot, desperate, inevitable, I crossed a line I could never uncross. Before the storm, before the blackout, before him, I was someone else entirely. People used to call me steady, dependable, a woman of order and calm. I remembered birthdays, wrote thank you notes, and lit candles before guests arrived. I had the wine decanted before dinner, and the music playing low in the background like an elegant whisper. I made life smooth for those around me. David, my husband, called me his rock. At the time, I accepted it as a compliment. But some days it felt like a chain around my ankle, dragging me down into something still and cold. I met David at a charity gala in downtown Chicago, 10 years ago. I still remember the clink of champagne glasses, the orchestra's soft hum, and the ache in my chest that I'd tried to drown in 3 glasses of white wine. I was 32, newly divorced. My first husband had buried our marriage under the weight of his betrayal, and I was still sifting through the rubble, bleeding from wounds no one could see. And then there was David, charming, clean-cut, wearing confidence like a second skin. Salt and pepper hair that made him look worldly, and a Rolex that caught the light every time he reached for his glass. His smile was like a promise. I won't hurt you. I won't lie. I'll make it better. I fell for him in slow, calculated steps like a woman who's already learned that love can be a dangerous game. A year later, we were married. He gave me everything I thought I needed. Stability, a house with immaculate landscaping, neighbors who waved but never pried, summers in Nantucket, winters in Aspen. It was a curated life. Beautiful on the outside, quiet on the inside. Then came Eli, David's son, my stepson. He was 21 when I met him, barely a man, but already hardened around the edges. Brooding, distant,
Scarred.
He rarely smiled, and when he did, it was like watching something break. His mother had remarried and moved to Italy, as if he were just another chapter she'd outgrown. David tried, in his way, to reconnect with Eli, but he didn't know how. And I was never supposed to be his mother. I tried to be kind, tried to make space. But Eli didn't want a replacement. He wanted to watch. At first, I thought it was nothing. A figment of a restless mind left too long alone. But then it became harder to ignore the way his gaze lingered a beat too long when I bent down. How his eyes seemed to follow me through doorways, the way he always forgot to put on a shirt when I passed his room. It felt like a dare, like he was waiting for me to look back. And I never meant to, not really. But something about those eyes, they weren't just watching. They were seeing. And God help me, some part of me wanted to be seen. David traveled constantly. Deals.
Client.
Seminars. Always something. I got used to sleeping alone, to making dinner for one. The house, no matter how perfectly arranged, started to feel cavernous. I told myself I was fine. I had routines.
Friends. Wine.
But sometimes at dinner, I'd feel Eli's knee brush mine under the table, and my body would stiffen not from fear, but from the sudden, shameful thrill of being noticed. And it wasn't just him. It was me. I started to change small things at first. A little more mascara. A neckline just slightly lower. A blouse that hugged instead of draped. When I knew he'd be home, I'd linger in the kitchen a bit longer, pretending I didn't notice the way his eyes trailed over me like a match just waiting to be struck. I was playing with fire, and I loved the heat. Then came the storm. It started with thunder in the distance, low, grumbling. A warning. By the time night fell, the wind was howling, and the rain lashed against the windows like it was trying to get in. Then the lights flickered, buzzed, and died. The silence that followed was thick and unnatural, as if the world had stopped breathing. I was halfway to the breaker box with a flashlight when I heard footsteps.
Eli.
He'd come downstairs. Shirtless again. Always shirtless. The glow of the flashlight caught his eyes, dark, unreadable, but so very alive. "I think the power's out," I said, my voice too loud in the hush. "Yeah," he replied, stepping closer. Storm must have taken down a line. He was inches from me, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off his skin, close enough to smell the rain still clinging to his hair. I should have moved. I should have. But instead, I looked up at him, and he looked down at me, and then we kissed. His lips were soft, but hungry, hesitant but certain. My flashlight clattered to the floor, forgotten. His hands were on my waist, my back, my face pulling me closer, like I was the air he needed. I wrapped myself around him, aching, desperate. My heart slammed against my ribs. The world outside roared, but inside, there was only us. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds? Minutes? It felt endless. And then, the lights came back.
Bright.
Jarring. Exposing everything. We pulled apart like guilty kids caught behind the bleachers. He stared at me, lips swollen, chest rising and falling fast and hard. His eyes said everything. So did mine. I turned and fled. In the safety of my bedroom, I pressed my back to the door and let the silence swallow me whole. My skin was still tingling, my lips still burning. I touched them. They felt like someone else's. Someone reckless. Someone alive. This couldn't happen again. I was his stepmother. I was Rachel Monroe, the good wife, the steady one. But as I lay in the dark, heart pounding, body humming with everything we had just done, I knew one terrible, inevitable truth. It would happen again. The lie that started it all felt so small at first. Harmless. Necessary. Like flipping a light switch in a room I wasn't supposed to be in. The morning after the power outage, I woke tangled in sheets that weren't mine, the scent of Eli still on my skin. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, David's name blinking across the screen. Flight delayed. Won't be home until Thursday. 3 more days. 3 more days to drown in this heat that pulsed through my blood, this guilt that lodged itself in my throat like a swallowed stone. 3 more days to pretend the memory of Eli's mouth on mine hadn't burned itself into every inch of me. I dressed slowly,
Carefully.
deliberately. A silk blouse David once bought me during a trip to San Francisco, saying the deep emerald color matched my eyes. Black slacks that hugged my hips just right. I dabbed perfume at my wrists, just a drop along my collarbone. For myself, I told the mirror. Just for me.
A lie.
Downstairs, Eli stood at the stove, shirtless, cooking eggs as if nothing had happened. The muscles in his back flexed with every motion, smooth and easy like water, like he hadn't undone me completely just hours ago. He turned at the sound of my footsteps. His eyes roamed over me, slow, unblinking, possessive. "Morning," he said, his voice still laced with sleep, low and rough like gravel dragged across velvet. I should have walked away. Should have grabbed a coffee and pretended like last night was a dream. Instead, I stepped closer. The first time happened in the laundry room, a place that stank of mundane routine. There were detergent bottles, a half-folded basket of towels, and the steady hum of the dryer. The morning sun filtered through the tiny window like liquid gold. I'd gone in to grab a towel. That was it.
Eli followed.
The door clicked shut behind him.
He didn't speak.
I didn't either. Then his hands were on me, turning me, lifting me onto the washer. The vibrations trembling beneath me like a warning I didn't want to heed. His mouth crashed into mine, hot, greedy, devastating. And I wanted it. He whispered against my lips, "Tell me to stop." But I didn't. Calloused hands scraped along my thighs. My back arched involuntarily as the machine below us surged into its next cycle, drums spinning wildly. Water gushed. A loud thunk as something inside shifted, and Eli smirked, his mouth brushing my ear. Guess we're not the only ones getting wet today. I should have been horrified. Instead, I laughed, breathless.
Alive.
More alive than I'd felt in years. His mouth found my neck, his knee pressed between mine, and just like that, guilt evaporated into steam. Only need remained. Sharp, coiled, urgent. Later. I braced myself for regret, waited for it to settle in my chest like concrete. But it never came. Instead, there was just more want.
Deeper. Hungrier.
We lay tangled in Eli's bed, the ceiling fan spinning above us like it might fling off at any moment. His fingers traced circles on my bare shoulder, and I realized with a jolt where we were in his childhood bedroom. Baseball trophies still lined the shelves. Old posters curling at the corners. "You're thinking too loud," he murmured. I was thinking about David, about how he kissed me goodbye without looking up from his phone, about how he hadn't touched me in months, about how I didn't care. Eli rolled on top of me, his weight already familiar, as if we had always belonged like this. His teeth grazed my earlobe. "He doesn't deserve you." And when he moved inside me again, I let myself believe him. The risk. It got dangerous, fast. We grew careless.
Wild.
The first time in his father's office, my legs wrapped around his waist while his hands tangled in my hair, and the smell of old leather and printer ink clung to everything. Other times, we snuck into the garden shed behind the garage, even in the pantry once when David was out walking the dog. Desire blurred with recklessness. Lines between mistakes and decisions disappeared entirely. Water sloshed over us in the outdoor shower. I bit down on his shoulder to muffle my cries. He made me forget where I ended and he began. Then one day, David came home early. We were in the hallway. Eli's shirt halfway on, my blouse misbuttoned. The garage door rumbled open like a warning bell. "Woo," Eli hissed, his voice low and urgent. I barely had time to smooth my clothes before David stepped inside, briefcase in one hand, smile in the other. "Surprise," he said. "You're early," I replied, my voice too bright, too brittle. His gaze drifted first to me, then to Eli, who leaned against the fridge barefoot and smug. "You two look busy." Silence stretched taut across the room.
Elityakled.
Lifting a bag of groceries we'd forgotten in the car. "Just helping Rachel bring these in." David didn't say anything, but his eyes narrowed, just slightly. That night, dinner was a war zone disguised as conversation. "Did you finish that report, Eli? You're home a lot more lately, aren't you, Rachel? What's that on your neck?" My fingers instinctively rose to the spot where Eli had bitten hours earlier. "Yoga accident," I lied. "Funny," David said softly. "You never liked yoga before." Under the table, Eli's hand brushed my thigh. David's fork clinked against the china. Close. Too close. The point of no return. I began locking our bedroom door not to keep David out, but to keep myself from sleepwalking down the hall into Eli's arms. It didn't work. One night, I woke to the warmth of fingers sliding up my thigh. His breath was hot against my neck. "Missed you," he whispered. "Your father's right down the hall," I warned, even as my body betrayed me. "That's what makes it hotter," he said. And the worst part? He was right. We were a secret carved in shadows, whispered into pillows, and exhaled in moans. Quiet.
Quick.
Desperate. Then one night, as he slipped back to his room, I heard it. The creak of David's door. Footsteps. I held my breath. The bathroom light flicked on. Relief. A second chance. But then I noticed Eli's phone on my nightstand. A message glowing on the lock screen. From David. "We need to talk, Bill Lum." I showed it to Eli. He laughed. "He's just pissed I missed curfew." But David's stares grew longer. His questions are sharper. Until the morning he dropped his briefcase, and papers spilled like secrets across the floor. I bent to help and saw it. A receipt. Private investigator. Dated yesterday. That night, I poured 2 glasses of bourbon. One for David. One for me. When he took the first sip, I said it. "I want a divorce." He didn't flinch. "It's Eli, isn't it?" My glass slipped. Cracked but didn't shatter. David smiled, a small, cold thing. "I've seen the way he looks at you. See the way you let him." I expected rage. Yelling. Accusations. But he leaned forward, calm and hollow. "I'll leave now and pretend I never noticed the truth." He packed one bag. Eli waited outside. Truck engine running. As we pulled away, my phone buzzed. David's final message. "You'll regret this." Eli squeezed my hand. He's wrong. But I stared out the window at the only home I'd ever known, and one thought repeated in my mind like a drumbeat. What have I done? The motel room reeked of bleach, stale air, and something heavier, something like regret soaked into the carpet. Eli tossed our bags onto the bed, because of course there was only one. He turned to me with that crooked smirk that used to feel like gravity pulling me closer. Now, it just made my hands tremble. "You okay?" he asked, peeling off his shirt like we hadn't just detonated both our lives with a kiss we never should have shared. I didn't answer. What was there to say? He laughed, low and careless, stepping closer like none of this mattered. "Yeah," he said, answering his own question. But he wasn't okay. Neither of us were. We were unraveling in slow motion, pretending we couldn't see the seams splitting. Then he reached for me. "Touch you." "I was," he murmured, voice low, almost broken. His hands gripped my hips with a desperation that should have scared me. I should have pushed him away. I should have walked out. But instead, I let myself disappear into him. There was no tenderness this time. No illusion of love. Just urgency biting, clawing, scratching the surface of something we both couldn't name. It was punishment as much as pleasure. A kind of penance we paid with our bodies. Later, when Eli finally fell asleep, mouth slack, arm draped across my thigh, I slipped from the bed like a ghost and locked myself in the bathroom. I collapsed to my knees on the cold tile and vomited until there was nothing left but dry heaves and shame. That was the beginning of the reckoning. David's revenge came exactly 3 days later, precise as a knife across the throat. First, the bank called. Our joint accounts froze. Every dollar locked in digital purgatory. Then, the eviction notice, bold and unapologetic, taped to the driver's side window of Eli's truck like a final insult. And finally, the email. Subject line, "For your records." I opened it with trembling fingers. Attachments. So many attachments. Grainy security footage of us pressed against the refrigerator in our kitchen, my shirt half unbuttoned, Eli's hands wandering. A screenshot of my search history. Can a stepmother marry her stepson? Another forwarded message from David to Eli's mother. Your stepson has touched my wife. Then came the cascade. Eli's phone buzzed until it glowed red-hot in his hands. Mom, he snapped, staring at the screen. What have you done?
Coach.
You're off the team, came the next one. A text from an unknown number. Hope it was worth the price you paid. He hurled the phone at the wall. It shattered into pieces, just like everything else. Woo, he exhaled, wide-eyed, unhinged. I sat very still on the edge of the bed, staring at the final nail in the coffin. A finalized divorce filing. One brutal stipulation. Life forfeits all marital assets due to infidelity. David hadn't reacted. He'd calculated. Waited in the shadows. Let me walk right into the snare he'd set with silk gloves and a smile. Eli spiraled fast after that. Not the 2 beers and a smirk kind of drinking. This was darker. Heavily poured bourbon, half-empty bottles beneath the sink. He'd slam cabinet doors like they'd insulted him. Gripped my wrist too tightly when he was angry, muttered curses under his breath about David ruining everything about me, ruining everything. One night, he came home smelling like a stranger's perfume.
Sweet.
Floral. Not mine. I didn't ask. What right did I have? Then came the Waffle House. 2 a.m. The place was nearly empty. Eli was on his 3rd bourbon, slurring stories to no one. I watched the grease congeal on our plates and found my voice, brittle as cracked glass. Maybe we should slow down. His fork hit the plate with a clang. He sneered, leaning in, eyes bloodshot. You mean me, Rachel?
You used me.
You were bored. And I was there. And now you're stuck with me.
Admit it.
The couple in the next booth stopped chewing. My throat burned, but I forced the words out. That's not true. He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. You miss your big house. Your rich husband. Go ahead. Crawl back to him. See if he wants you now that everyone knows what you are. I threw my water in his face. The cup bounced off his shoulder. He just wiped his chin, laughing. There's Rachel I like. That night, I woke to silence. Eli was gone. So was the $300 I'd hidden in my sock drawer. Just a scribbled note left behind on motel stationery. You're not the first. Won't be the last.
Jay. His real name. Or at least one of them.
I sat on the edge of the bed and laughed. Ugly, gasping laughter. Then tears. I cried until my chest ached. And then I called the only number I had left. David answered on the first ring. Rachel. Just my name.
No anger. No satisfaction.
Just knowing. I closed my eyes. I want to come home. There was silence. Long enough for my heart to crack a little deeper. Then, you're home. Look outside. I pulled the curtain back. David's BMW was idling in the parking lot. Black.
Sleek.
Familiar. Waiting. Always waiting. I stood there for 10 minutes, phone still in my hand, watching the car, watching my own reflection in the grime-streaked glass. Smudged mascara. Tangled hair. Bruised skin. The ghost of Eli's fingerprints still shadowing my collarbone. The phone rang again. David. I let it go to voicemail. Then I packed what little I had left the key on the dresser and walked out. Past the BMW. Past the motel office. Past everything I thought I wanted. David didn't follow. He didn't have to. Some punishments don't require chains. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and burned beans. An odd comfort in the routine of my exile. I stirred my latte absently, watching the foam dissolve into soft spirals that disappeared like so many things in my life. My therapist told me I should write things down, put the trauma into words so it could stop rotting inside me. But all I ever seemed to write was, I miss the house. I miss my old life. I don't miss him.
Why?
The truth stung every time. I missed both of them. David and Eli. That was the cruelest cut of all. How grief could wrap itself in layers of betrayal and still leave you aching for what destroyed you. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert. Court hearing. 2 p.m. Final divorce decree. David had been surprisingly generous. No alimony, but no lawsuit either. A clean break, on paper at least. The emotional ledger was far messier. I was about to silence the notification when a new text lit up the screen. Unknown number. Look behind you. My stomach dropped like a stone into cold water. And there he was. Eli slid into the chair across from me like a ghost with swagger, smirking, tattooed, his jaw sharper, hair longer, smelling of expensive cologne and worse decisions. He was the same storm in a different season. Miss me? He asked, voice dipped in arrogance. I didn't blink. You stole my money. He shrugged, casual. You stole my dad's wife. Technically true. The barista called his name Jesse. He winked as he stood to fetch his drink. A new alias. A new life. I watched him saunter to the counter. Watched the college girls giggle as he brushed past them. St. Eli, rebranded. Different prey. He came back with a latte and a folded newspaper, which he tossed onto the table like a dead bird. The Society page. Tech CEO David Monroe to wed marketing executive Malene Brooks. The photo showed David grinning beside a blonde barely older than his assistant. Her hand on his chest. His arm around her waist.
Smug.
Polished, untouched by consequence. Eli leaned in. He had her lined up before we even left. I sipped my coffee, steady. I know. I'd seen the emails. The hotel receipts. The trail of lies I chose not to follow too closely while drowning in my own. I wasn't innocent, just blind in selective ways. His smirk faltered. You're not even mad. Oh, I'm furious, I said, setting down the cup. Just not at him. Eli waited until I stood to leave before dropping the final blade. She's pregnant. I froze. Due in March, he added, rising to his full height. Towering over me, just like he used to. Guess he didn't have fertility issues after all. It was a twist of the knife I didn't know was still lodged in me. David and I had tried for years.
Failed.
He blamed me subtly, silently, like a slow poison. And now here he was, breeding joy with someone else. Eli stepped in closer, his breath hot against my ear. I could make you forget him again. I laughed. Not from humor, but disbelief. Then I walked out past the starting customers, past the pitying barista, past the ghost of the woman I used to be. A week later, a letter arrived. Thick linen paper. David's monogram embossed in gold. Inside, just one sentence. I forgive you.
No signature.
No plea for reconciliation. Just clean, surgical absolution. I didn't deserve it. I burned it in the sink. The therapist asks me why I keep showing up what I'm really chasing. Because I chose a boy over my life. I say. I wait. I breathe. Because part of me would do it again. The silence stretches. Heavy.
Real.
Some confessions don't seek forgiveness. They just need a witness. Rachel's future wasn't a fresh start. It was a slow unraveling stitched back together with rough thread. After Eli, after David, after losing everything that once felt like home, even if it had been a house of cards, she moved to a town so small it didn't even show up properly on GPS. No one knew her name. No one knew her sins. She took a job at a tired old diner where the manager paid her in cash and stared too long at her chest. Her hands became stained with coffee grounds and fryer oil. Her once manicured nails chipped and flaked under the weight of scrubbing burnt pans and restocking condiments. She lived in a one-room apartment with mold in the corners and neighbors who screamed through thin walls. Nights were spent on a sagging mattress, staring at a ceiling that dripped when it rained. The money barely covered rent. Every so often, she found herself searching their names. David's LinkedIn, pristine and triumphant. Malene's Instagram, all curated bliss baby bumps. Matching Christmas pajamas, Italy in spring. Eli came up too. Mugshots. Petty theft. A bar fight. The damage he used to leave in her wake, now chasing someone else. It should have felt like justice. It didn't. Holidays were the worst. The silence was so loud, she left the TV on, even while sleeping. Cheap wine replaced dinner. Regret replaced celebration. The few friends who hadn't entirely disappeared spoke to her with soft voices and softer eyes, navigating around her past like broken glass. Their pity suffocated more than their judgment ever could. Years blurred. Her beauty hardened. She became the kind of woman people noticed once and never remembered. She dreamed of reinvention, but every version crumbled under the weight of who she had been. Until one rainy Tuesday afternoon, she passed a flyer on a bulletin board. Community college open enrollment counseling degrees available. Her finger traced the edges of the brochure like a prayer. Something stirred in her chest, fragile, tentative, not hope exactly, but the ghost of it. Maybe, just maybe, she could help someone else. Someone who lost themselves. Someone who gave too much to the wrong hands. Someone like her. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be fast. But it would be something.
A step. A breath.
A decision not to keep running. The road ahead was long, and she was still haunted by shadows. But the woman in the mirror no longer frightened her. She was someone Rachel could learn to live with. Maybe even forgive. Eventually.